Hi everyone, Mad Luigi here, and today I'm going to be doing a little bit of a different kind of video. Instead of my normal lore or analysis video on Elden Ring or Thymesia or what have you, I just want to celebrate and say thank you for the fact that I've recently hit 50,000 subscribers. And in addition to that, my Elden Ring Endings Explained video hit 1 million views, so we can kind of celebrate both here. Basically, this is going to be a Q&A video. I asked if anybody had questions on a community post, and I got a couple answers, so I'm going to go through most of them. A lot of them are lore questions, and fair warning, I'm going to be doing this off the dome. I do not have an encyclopedic knowledge of the lore, like I'm sure there are some other Elden Ring creators that have a more extensive just like memory of all the lore and the things in the game. And I don't have that, so a lot of the answers might be not super substantive. But this is a celebration video, so that's not the main point. And with that, I'm going to get into it. So let's get started with the first question. Is Luigi your real name? No, Luigi is not my real name. The gamer tag Mad Luigi, or the YouTube channel name, comes from just the first gamer tag I made when I was like 8. I played a lot of Smash Bros. I played Luigi in Smash. I'm a younger brother, so it makes sense I play Luigi, and I just went with Mad Luigi, and that stuck. Though the full name Mad Luigi, it does have some phonetic similarity to my name. My actual name is just Matt, so Mad and Matt go together. Next question, thoughts as to how many lore videos you think Elden Ring has left for you to make? Can't speak about any DLC just yet. Once you feel you've run out, what do you plan on doing next? Or what do you plan on doing next? Insert the little sick sign from my Cemetery Shades video. So, how many lore videos does Elden Ring have left for me to make? That kind of depends. Since I started my lore videos pretty broad and central, kind of the central figures of the game, like Morgott, Godric, Radagon, I did Radahn, the endings. These were all central demigods, gods, all big players. And then I kind of moved away from that after I took a little bit of a break. Honestly, part of the reason is because Smotown just does such a good job with his big comprehensive videos. And I'm not making currently hour-and-a-half long videos about these main topics. So I kind of went into another path of exploring other kinds of things, like my recent videos about some of the very hard to find lore enemies in the game, and there are more of those. So in terms of answering the question, how many lore videos, I can't say. I could do 2 more and be like, okay, I want to transition, or I could do 15 more and they're just interspersed with other kinds of content. I don't think I'm going to be doing 15 lore videos straight. Obviously, the DLC will have a lot more lore videos in store, because the DLC should expand on the lore in a good amount of ways, or expand on one area of the lore. But there are probably a handful of other low amounts of lore enemies that I kind of want to highlight. Like one comment mentioned the Raven Mountain Assassin, so that could be something I do a lore video on. And also, I do want to do other kinds of videos, maybe after I'm done with all the lore videos, but also currently. Like, I want to do a pretty comprehensive critique of Elden Ring, or at least the biggest issue I have with it. And I think that'll come up in another comment, so I'll save on that. But also things like more of the philosophy and themes. Like my one philosophy video, I was really happy with that. The Frenzy Flame and Nietzsche. So I'd like to do more of that, like the central philosophy of the game, about how we must struggle, and how that's kind of been the overarching mantra of the FromSoft games in general, is to persevere, and to life is worth it through that perseverance, through the struggle, despite the horrors and the darkness that we see in these games, just like we see in life. And I think that's a very central theme, and it's shown in a lot of ways in the game. So I'd like to do a philosophy video in general on that, and looking at other aspects in the game that show philosophical elements, and also how games and philosophy interact, how games are a unique art form, and the philosophy of aesthetics in relation to games. So yeah, a lot of philosophy. I'd like to do more general game analysis on Elden Ring, and then maybe some other games as well, and that connects with the philosophy and how certain games really use the fact that they're a game really well. Like Dark Souls did that really well, and somewhat by extension the rest of the series, but it's most explicitly done with Dark Souls 1 with Halloween and Death, and I covered that in one small video back in the day. But there's also Nier Automata, or Automata, and Soma is another good one that does that. Celeste, I think, kind of does it. Maybe Outer Wilds, BG Matthew, or the guy that did one of the Elden Ring boss critiques. He has a Outer Wilds video, I think, that's going to release soon that is covering that. So excited to see that. And yeah, that's basically some of what else I'm going to cover on the channel. I want to do more lore, I want to do philosophy themes, philosophy of games, and philosophy in Elden Ring. Okay, next up. So what's the lore reason for rolling making you invincible, and is there an outer god of rolling I should know about? So there probably is not an outer god of rolling, unfortunately, but there are some items that reference rolling and make your rolling better. They don't give much lore explanation on it, just like in previous Souls games, there were rings. I forget what they were, like Dark Souls 3, they were the white or silver and red gem rings. I don't know what the names are, but I know there were 2 different rolling rings. In this game, I actually pulled this up. There's the Crucible Feather Talisman, which reads, improves the effectiveness of dodge rolls, but increases damage taken at all times, and then it gives some Crucible lore. Nothing about rolling, but it's just feathers, so it's an aspect of the Crucible. And then there's also one other, the Windy Crystal Tear, which I don't know if I ever actually picked up on a playthrough. The resulting concoction increases the effectiveness of dodge rolls for a certain duration, but it doesn't give any lore. That just came from the Erd Tree. The previous item, the Crucible Feather Talisman, these are both old aspects. Crystal Tears come from the Erd Tree, and the Crucible Talismans are obviously from the Crucible. So whatever rolling is, it's something very old and maybe just relates to the Crucible, we could say. It's an aspect of that. The Crucible, not really an outer god, but an older primordial form of life in the lands between. Next question, congrats, really have liked your videos. Do you think Elden Ring should have been made differently, and how? What are the main issues with the game compared to the other FromSoft games? I don't know if I would say necessarily compared to the other FromSoft games, but I know I can speak on what I think Elden Ring's major flaw is, how it should have been made differently, what are the main issues. I think Elden Ring is too big. It simply is too big. A lot of the videos that talk about the issues in Elden Ring, even the critiques or the defenses, they all describe the issues that come about. Maybe not always, but it feels like almost always they're issues where they're saying, well, if you're gonna have an open world that's this big and this expansive and open world and it's so massive and there's so much content, you're gonna have to reuse bosses, you're gonna have to reuse assets, you're gonna have enemies in the ways they are. And it's all stuff that I think is just, the game should be smaller. The last half to third of the game is pretty slow. The mountaintop of the giants is not a well done area in the sense of, as some have said, it might have been better just without any enemies at all, as opposed to repurposed enemies from Caelid. I think there is nearly no, if not no, new enemies after you get out of Langdell for the rest of the game. It's just, there are so many issues. The reuse of bosses and just the scope of the game introduces so many things that I think if the game was smaller, just like say 60 to 70% the size of the current game, that time that was spent making it bigger was just spent on refining and making the best experience out of the 60 to 70% that was remaining. I think that would have been a better game than the Elden Ring we see here. I think a lot of the issues in the current Elden Ring would have been fixed if it was just a smaller game and it was a more well polished in all of the areas that were kept. And that said, it could still be a really massive game. 60 to 70% of Elden Ring is still a massive game that's longer than any of the previous FromSoft titles. So it can be an open world, it can be big, it can be great, it can be grand, but it could have been better, I think, if it was smaller. And in a more dedicated critique video, I would talk about that, because that's my central issue with the game, is that it's too big. And main issues compared to other FromSoft games, yeah, it's too big. Most of the other FromSoft games have aspects or characteristics that are better done than Elden Ring, but also Elden Ring has plenty of aspects that are better done than a lot of those games. But yeah, so I would say that's the main issue. Next question, why was our first maiden killed? I don't know a good lore reason, but it presents a good place to start to make the character something special, in the sense of, once you first start the game, you notice that there's an issue, you don't have a maiden, so you can't progress normally, so you have to go in the game and you meet Melina, and it progresses as you are the one to become the Elden Lord, as opposed to any Tarnished, when there are lots of Tarnished. It's basically like a kind of inciting moment. It's not something that happens when you're going around, but it serves a similar purpose in getting the story going in a special way. Next question, alright, what's with the ancient dragon god, Placidus's god? I actually did bring up the remembrance of the Dragon Lord to just explicitly answer this. The Dragon Lord, whose seat lies at the heart of the storm, beyond time, is said to have been Elden Lord in the age before the Erd Tree. Once his god was fled, the Lord continued to await its return. This is the Fextra I'm reading. I don't have the actual game text open, so there could be something issue there, but it's probably right. If there's an issue, someone let me know. So that's what the question is referring to, the ancient dragon god. It could be that the god is the outer god, since we know that from this item, Placidusix was said to have been an Elden Lord. So it could have just been that the Greater Will abandoned the dragons in favor of Marika and Godfrey. But it also could have been a god like how Marika is a god to Radagon and Godfrey. They are the Elden Lord and Marika is their god. This god could have been Placidusix's basically just counterpart god that justifies him as Elden Lord. And at that point, I don't know if there are any good theories about what that is. There probably are. I don't know them about who or what that would have been. The ancient dragon god that fled. It could just be something that's expanded on the DLC. Could be something that's never referenced again, just to set up that this dragon was an Elden Lord before, to give more context to the ages of the Erd Tree and before the Erd Tree and what an Elden Lord can and can't be. This is evidence that Godfrey wasn't the first Elden Lord, all things considered. Maybe he's the first Elden Lord of the age of the Erd Tree, but there were Elden Lords before that. So shows that the Elden Ring probably was operating in a way before the Erd Tree came about in its current existence. So I don't have a further answer past that, but it does show some specific things. Next up, we have some of the longer questions. Did the Erd Tree just spit down a bunch of thorny branches to kill all the giants in one fell swoop? The way the scene is set up and lore bits we find, Marika sent Godfrey and the Tarnished to face off with the giants, getting them all together in one good spot to cast a devilish spell to wipe them all out. Erd Tree, Thornageddon. Those guided by grace, of course, recycle back into the Erd Tree, kind of a win-win for the New Order if I ask you or if you ask me. This is a possible theory. We see in the mountaintop of the giants that lots of the giants look like they were probably gutted at once. And if I'm thinking about it very just off the cuff, I haven't thought about this much at all ever before, it would make sense that kind of one fell swoop attack of some kind happens. I don't know if that would have included all of the, I guess, people that would become tarnished. They wouldn't be tarnished yet. Godfrey and the rest of the Golden Order that was attacking the giants, that Marika would use some sort of spell to get them all at once. It does look like an event that could have happened all at once because all of the giants are kind of frozen in time in a moment with their stomachs gutted, probably of the fell god. But yeah, so it could be. It's definitely a possibility, though I don't remember or know enough about the giants specifically to tell. Next, I'd love to know what you think of overall timeline of events that occur from the falling of the Elden Beast to the start of the game as your character, as well as how you think Farum Azula connects to the rest of the game, which could be its own video. Congrats on the 50k. Thank you for the congratulations, and a timeline is hard to say. I know Quaylag had a video that was going through some of the timeline of the game in the sense of things that corresponded to timelines in the real world, like Mesopotamia and the Roman Empire and the rise of Christianity, and kind of themes and languages and stuff in the game that are referencing that kind of thing. But as an overall timeline, it would be hard to say. We did talk earlier in this video just a few minutes ago about how Placidusix was an Elden Lord before the Age of the Erd Tree. So it definitely starts with the Crucible, or the One Great, as the Frenzied Flame likes to say, where everything was kind of one. And as time went on, the individuation happened, so things grew out and became individual aspects. Maybe the Greater Will was the significant influence in causing that individuation. Maybe it was happening to some degree, and the Elden Ring really promulgated that more. We see the Frenzied Flame blaming the Greater Will for that, for individuation, for the end of what was the Crucible, and how it wants to turn everything back into one. But in terms of specifics, it's hard to say. The Elden Beast and the Elden Ring are supposed to have come at the same time, which is probably pretty early on. Maybe the Crucible was in some state before that, and then the Elden Beast and the Elden Ring came. And the timeline of all the events of the game is hard to say, or it's hard to say for me offhand right now. A specific timeline to some degree can be built, but obviously a lot of things are pretty murky. We have the Nox existing at some point before they were destroyed by the Greater Will and by probably Estelle taking away the sky of the nameless eternal city in the deep root depths, dark root depths. We have the sword monuments that talk about the different battles and ages in the Shattering, for example. We don't have a super clear timeline on the events or super specifics on a lot of those events, like the first Langdell War, I think, and the second Langdell War. Second one definitely came after the first. So a lot of the specifics I just can't answer too well. Farum Azula we talked about a little bit in the Stoneworm, what's the name? The Lookout Stones video. Seems like the Lookout Stones were built from the ruin fragments of Farum Azula, so Farum Azula already started getting destroyed before those were built, possibly, or maybe they were refurbished with them. But Farum Azula, being the mausoleum of Placidusix, is very ancient. We know Placidusix is ancient because he was the Elden Lord before the Age of the Erd Tree. So Farum Azula would have been probably the oldest in the game, save for the ruins we see in the grounds of the Lands Between. But yeah, so not gonna have a clearer picture on that. Next, do you think Godric's dragon grab attack is bugged due to the little amount of damage it does? I haven't fought Godric in a long enough time while checking the health bar and getting grabbed by the dragon grab, so I can't say. It could have been. I maybe got grabbed in like my first playthrough, and if I would remember, I don't think I would have gotten killed by the grab. So maybe the fact that it's a grab and it's not a one-shot means it doesn't do much damage. And maybe people in the comments, maybe you guys watching have fought Godric recently and it does a really small amount of damage. And if that's the case, a grab normally does a high amount of damage, and the animation for his grab is pretty high damaging, or looks like a lot of damage. It looks like that's a lot of damage. So I would say maybe, but I don't know. Next up, we have a question I probably won't be able to answer like at all. Who or what do the various statues represent? I assume many are just decorative, not representing anyone in particular, but others not so much. Like the statues of a robed figure holding a gold staff found all over Langdell capital could very well be Godwyn. What about the sculpture holding crystals found in Roundtable Holds and Bellum Highway? And yeah, the rest of it keeps going, but I don't know. I don't know most of these statues by memory. I know there are the statues underground of the long, tall guy with the beard and the tablets, kind of looking like 10 Commandments. I don't know what those statues reference. I haven't looked into it. There could be something that gives some evidence about them. I know they're in like Mog's. I think they're in Mog's Mausoleum or Mogwyn Palace. I know they're in like the Shofarwell Rivers or somewhere around there, but I wouldn't be able to say specifically what they are or what most of the statues are. In the previous video, my previous video on the Cemetery Shades, we did learn just a little bit about Rosus, who is the Usher of Death, and Rosus is the one who is the statue that points to catacombs throughout the Lands Between. The statues you go up to and click on them, and then they point to a catacomb with like a blue light. Those are Rosus. I can say that. Rosus's axe describes a little bit about how Rosus was the Usher of Death. Other than that, I don't know. And a follow-up question also was curious about the giant waterfall that goes from Caelid, east of Bestial Sanction, straight up to Mountaintops of the Giants, just a feature of the world or result of some event. Does that mean some of the other water features drawn on the map can be found? I don't know what this is reference to, and I don't have the game open. Is it saying that this is a feature on the map, or this is a feature just a waterfall in the actual world? I don't know. Yeah, sorry. And finally, we have a very long question for the final one. I'm not going to read the whole thing here. I'm going to read the actual question at the end and summarize a little bit, and then I'll answer it as best I can. What do you think about the lore game as a whole on a thematic level? And then thoughts on these kinds of ideas. The ideas presented here are basically like Elden Ring being meta, America representing FromSoft fan / veteran, and kinds of ideas about different roles being represented or different kinds of people experiencing the game or creating the game. Being represented by people in the game, or ideas about global politics, America representing America, the Golden Order representing Christianity. The Golden Order representing Christianity, there is definitely some element to that. One, just like a strong religious order, like the church in Bloodborne has obviously ties to like churches in real life, like elements and thematics of that obviously plays into the presentation of it in the game. And it does so here. Like the Quelaag video I mentioned talks about how aspects of the Golden Order kind of mirroring aspects of Christianity and how they develop over time. So there definitely is some of that, though the other kinds of meta interpretations, I don't know. There are plenty of things to interpret about the games, and you can take them in the direction you will. Sometimes getting really, really deep in the weeds doesn't seem the most sensible to me, and that might seem odd coming from somebody who kind of does that on my channel a lot. But I don't know, really deep speculation never, I don't know. I don't seem to super like it, or I don't seem to super think it's the best way for me to understand things, at least. So I wouldn't really think of America representing the FromSoft fan or veteran, or things being too meta. They can be. Maybe I'm not a good judge of when things are meta versus when they aren't. But yeah, I think there are lots of themes that the game does kind of get meta in the sense of, like when I talked about Dark Souls 1 and how games interact and are unique forms of art, and they do so by being interactive. Games are distinct because they're interactive as opposed to movies or books or what have you. And so maybe there's some meta level there in the sense of pulling the player in and that using the interactivity with the narrative of the game to make something greater. Maybe that's kind of meta. Dark Souls does that with Halloween and death and how the player themselves can go hollow if they give up on the game, and that can lead to their player character being hollow. Because the Halloween in the game that the player character experiences isn't full Halloween. They never go full brainless, so they don't turn into a full hollow, unless maybe the player becomes a hollow and gives up on the game. So then Elden Ring is kind of an extension of that, like most of the FromSoft games, in the sense of struggling, of not giving up, not falling to the temptation to give up, of how things are too difficult and they're too hard and too dark, and to just throw it all away. So maybe there's a meta aspect there, though I'm not super on the level of getting really deep speculations of, I guess, just of another kind. But maybe that's just a personal bias, so I don't know. And that does it for the questions I had as of recording this video. And yeah, so thank you very much for everybody who watched. Let me know if you have any thoughts on the game, on creating content, on any of my answers here. If you have more questions, you can maybe leave them in the comments, and if they're straightforward enough, I can answer them in comment form. And yeah, just thanks so much for everybody who's been with me on this ride. 50,000 is a lot, and next year is going to be the 10-year anniversary of this channel. I've had many big hiatuses, but I first started making videos on this channel almost 10 years ago, and I actually started making videos even before that. It's been a long ride, and it's been a very exciting ride, definitely, once Elden Ring stuff has come out and we've gotten a lot of new people on the channel. There have been so many hiatuses, and the channel's so old that a lot of my old-time subscribers probably just don't exist anymore, or they don't use their accounts, or they're not on YouTube, or they've aged out, or they subscribed for Minecraft videos in 2014 or whenever I was making videos, and now I'm doing Elden Ring lore videos in 2022, so they're not watching. But thank you to everyone who has been watching. I'm gonna keep going. Definitely shooting for 100,000 subscribers. That is the, I guess, big goal, but also a goal is to do this full time. 100,000 subscribers would help me get closer to that. And yeah, so thank you for watching. Thank you for being part of the channel. Thank you for supporting my work in any way you do. You can do that by liking and subscribing, of course, by becoming a patron on Patreon, and even just viewing the videos, commenting your thoughts and stuff. It all helps. It all is great. And I like to see the discussion. I really like to see people enjoying the content and feeling like it's meaningful stuff. I've gotten a lot of really nice comments on the 50,000 subscriber stuff, and it was really great to see people liking my content, people thinking I go in depth with stuff, and they really liking the philosophy stuff, which I wasn't sure if people would like, since that's definitely a little bit more esoteric and drier academic stuff, maybe a little bit, but it is like philosophy of life and like living and really like powerful stuff. That's what I like the most, and that's what I tried to present in that video, and I would want to present in future videos I do. I really want to do more of that deeper themes and like kind of the justifying life and finding the really good stuff in art, in games, and that they show in Elden Ring, they show in many areas of life. So I'm rambling, but it's just all to say thank you, and to reflect, and to be at peace, and to have a good time doing things that I enjoy, that are meaningful. Not just hedonism, there's also some meaning behind it. So thank you for watching. Said it probably 2 or 3 times now. Hope you'll stick around to the channel, look out for more videos, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks, bye.